Hi, everyone. Today we're going to give a presentation on the Production Process Control Procedure, or SYS-012. This webinar will explain how to review and edit and implement the procedure in your quality system. You should be able to all see my screen here. So when you purchase the procedure, you go to our website. I can actually show the website. Let me do that right now. Little deviation from my original plan here. Okay. Here's our website. And if you're visiting our website, you can go up to the menu here, and this is where all our turnkey quality system procedure links are. You click on that. And when you scroll down to the bottom of the page, it lists all the procedures individually. And the one that we're reviewing today is this one. So this is where you actually go to visit our the web page for purchasing that procedure. And this procedure tells you what it includes. So here's a screen capture of it. And it has other information about the procedure. This is the webinar that we're doing today. But if you want to actually purchase the procedure and the forms and logs that go with the procedures, you have to go to that website, or you have to purchase the turnkey quality system as a whole. So that's where you purchase it, but it's at medicaldeviceacademy.com. And you can either go to this turnkey link and scroll down to the bottom, or you can go directly to Production Process Control Procedure. This search tool is also very helpful. So if you were looking for SYS-012, for example, it would immediately take you to that page. Okay, so now we'll go back to the live presentation here. So that's what you get when you purchase the procedure. There's a copy of the procedure, the native slide deck, a screen capture that was used for the thumbnail on this video. There's a checklist for a device history record or batch record release checklist. So this is usually used to make sure all the contents of your batch record are included before you go releasing product. You don't want to have any paperwork missing from it. One of the things that often is missing is if there were any nonconformities, a copy of the nonconformity would be included in that checklist. And then also would be the medical device file index. This is also referred to as a DMR index or a technical file index. One document can provide all three requirements. There isn't any specific format or content for a DMR or a medical device file. They tell you some things that need to be in it, but those things are also included in a technical file, which does have a very specific content and format that you're supposed to use that's outlined in the EU MDR Annex 2. So we recommend using an index for all three because all three allow you to use an index, but specific content requirements, we align very closely with the MDR requirements. For what's required in ISO 1345, there's two requirements. The first one is the medical device file, and this is what I was just talking about. They give you in broad terms what the contents of the file should be, but it's not as nearly as detailed as what's required in a technical file. And you can have each of these requirements easily included in your technical file or medical device file checklist or index. The second requirement is clause 7.5.1, where you have control of production and service provisions. For this, what you're looking for is whenever you do production, you should have documented procedures or work instructions. Any equipment that you're using should be validated if it requires validation. Any monitoring and measuring, like calibrated devices, those have to be used as well, and you have to record the calibration ID. Labeling has to be controlled, so you want to identify and segregate. You want to do line clearance at the end of the production runs. And you also should have procedures for the product release and delivery, including shipping. How should you package and ship the product? Of course, you have to keep records for this, and traceability depends on the level of risk. But for most devices, we do lot traceability. For implants and electromedical devices, we use serial numbers typically. Here's the FDA requirements. I've broken it up into 2 pages for the production process control requirements. And this is one of the major QZ modules that the FDA inspectors will look at. They'll look at CAPA, design, production process controls, and management systems. So they have general requirements, production process changes. So this is when you change anything in production, you want to document that and validate the changes. Environmental controls, you might have ESD controls if you have an electromedical device. You would have cleanliness requirements if you have a sterile product. You have training requirements for the personnel, including gowning requirements for all of the people that are working in a clean room environment or a controlled environment. You have contamination control. That's, again, part of that clean room and controlled environment requirements. You would have building requirements. This would include any kind of pest control requirements as well as air handling. You want to have adequate space, and you want to make sure the flow of the materials in such a way that product can't be lost. You would have equipment that you're going to maintain and have a preventive maintenance schedule for. You would typically have logs or records of that. You would have manufacturing materials that you would release after doing inspection to inventory and then bring that out to the production areas. And then any automated processes you're going to have to validate, and you would have validation reports for those. For European requirements, it's the smallest requirements of all. All they say is that the quality management system shall address at least the following aspects: product realization, planning, design, development, production, and service. So production is just this little piece right here. Very little in the way of specific requirements from the MDR, but that's the way the European regulations go. They leverage the ISO standard. For changes needed for all templates, this is all of our procedures. This procedure is no different. You would update the logo, or you would eliminate the logo if you don't want to use a logo, but you would use your logo instead of ours. You would update the version number. So we have them all as 0 point something for drafts. You would change that to 1.0 when you release the procedure. You would indicate the effective date. I was just asked this last week. It's a really important question. Typically, what I recommend is that you do the training before you release the procedure so you have an opportunity to get feedback. Production is one of those especially important areas to do the training before you actually release the procedure, because your production batch records might not be laid out intuitively the way people are actually going to be performing the procedure. So you want it to follow the actual production process flow. And you also want to make sure they have enough room on the forms to fill in things. And you want to make sure they understand both the work instructions and the forms. So if there's any questions, capture that before you actually review and approve the procedure to make final changes. So everybody agrees, okay, this is the final version. Now we're going to approve it. Way a lot of companies do it instead of what I recommend is they'll review and approve the procedure, and then they will do the training. And then they'll find out they have to make another set of changes because it doesn't make sense to people or it isn't adequate. So make sure you do that training with people before you finalize the procedure. Get them involved in the process so you have a really solid procedure that makes sense to everyone. The third way I see it sometimes is people will do, they will actually specify you have up to 30 days to train people. Sometimes they will actually indicate the effective date is the date that training is expected to be completed. I prefer the method of train first, then approve. Update the author name instead of my name or somebody from my team. Make sure that it's your name, whoever did the final edits to this procedure. Replace the brackets company name with your company's name and eliminate the brackets. Update references to other procedures. If you didn't buy our complete turnkey quality system, then make sure all the references match your document numbers. If you did buy our turnkey quality system, you can ignore that step. You want to update the process flow chart. So once again, if you have to change any of the document reference numbers, you're also going to have to update that flow chart that references those. The titles are generic titles that we used. You can use your own titles. There's no regulation that says this title or that title, except for the role of management representative. So in our manager review procedure, that's would be important, but everywhere else, it's not. For training and retraining requirements, once again, we have the same titles there. You would replace those with ones from your org chart. For updating metrics, there's a section on metrics. We propose some metrics, but you decide what's important to measure in your company. Not every company is the same, and what you measure might be different, very different for a software product versus a sterile product. You want to update records and storage locations. So you're going to actually indicate what the hyperlink is for that storage location, unless you have an electronic quality management system where things are automatically put in the right location and that's validated. And finally, you're going to add or remove references based on the markets where you actually sell your product. So if you're selling it in Europe, you would include European regulations. If you're selling it in Canada, you include Canadian regulations. If you're selling in the US, you include US regulations. And any of those that don't apply, you would remove. So now we're going to get into the guts of the procedure. What we do is actually do screen captures from the actual procedure. So you can actually go to the procedure and see this and make edits. But one of the things we had pointed out, company name, that's something you have to update. Throughout all our procedures, we have color coding, but we also added symbols so that way you can search by the symbol to find the procedure requirements. So in this case, the blue and the hashtag refer to ISO 1345 requirements. This is the process flow diagram, gives you inputs and outputs of procedures, and it also is giving you forms. So these are the indexes that we talked about before. Over on the right. And why isn't my cursor showing up? Oh, I guess I don't get a cursor today. Okay, here we go. So there's one index, two index, and then our DHR checklist or batch record checklist. You have an approval history, revision history. The approval list, these are the people that we recommend to approve it. We actually have a procedure that we're, or a blog that we're posting on the topic of review and approval of procedures. I think that hits tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, check out our blog posting tomorrow. It's specifically going to talk about that, but in general, we try to keep that list as short as possible instead of having very long lists. There isn't any specific place in the regulations where they say who has to approve. They just say you have to define it. So in general, we recommend the author and somebody from quality, as well as the process owner. So the author is going to be listed here. They don't have to be an approver, but they should be listed as the author. The process owner, they're responsible for this procedure, so it makes sense that they would approve it. So in the case of manufacturing or production process controls, it makes sense to have whoever that's responsible for that area. Maybe it's an operations manager. And then the quality manager is responsible for the entire quality system, so they should have some review and approval power as well. But executive management, not necessary except in the process of manager review, where they're responsible for that process. They're the process owner. For responsibilities and authorities, it's primarily the manufacturing management. And then we get into the guts of the procedure, which is broken up into two different pages. You would not list all your work instructions on how to build the product. You would reference them in your DNR. So this procedure could be used for multiple production lines of multiple products, and you would list each of the DMRs here for each product line. So that's one of the ways that we've structured this. We don't give you detailed work instructions because we don't know what product you're building. And this is the second page of that requirement. Then we have monitoring and measuring. You decide what you're going to monitor and measure, but most of the time in production, we're looking at cycle times, we're looking at first pass yields, we're looking at how much non-conforming product you have, any in-process rejects, where they're occurring, so you can try to improve the process and eliminate rejects. Those are the kinds of typical monitoring and measuring that we would expect for manufacturing. For the training, we would expect people to be trained on this procedure in general if they're part of manufacturing management. The people that are actually producing product would be responsible for training on the things in the DMR, not necessarily this procedure. And then the risk management, we apply a risk-based approach to all the quality system procedures. So we have a section that explains here are the common things that can occur, mix-up being probably the most important one, and we recommend line clearance as your risk control to prevent that from happening. But you can identify what things are important for your company. If you have a software company, things like software bugs, releasing the wrong version, making sure it's approved and validated before you release it, those would be some of the kinds of things you'd be looking for. And then in the records, there are 3 different records that are listed. One is your DHR or batch record. One is your DMR or device master record index or technical file index. And then we have monitoring that you would do, and you have to keep records of that monitoring. So that takes us, I believe, to the end of the procedure. We are doing a live streaming webinar on Friday. So this is the topic. Our software as a medical device, or our software as a medical device 510K is easier to submit. And of course, software in a medical device would be more complicated than software as a medical device, but we're going to compare it to devices where it may not be so obvious in the case of a sterile syringe versus software as a medical device. Other webinars that are going on every Monday, we have a procedure. So I believe our next one is SYS-17 for data SYS-17 for data analysis, I believe is the next one. And then we have another one that is going to be this Thursday on design history files. So those are the 2 that are coming up. You can go to our webinars page with the hyperlink is shown below, but the Friday live streaming that's shown on the screen here. And then, of course, we periodically have new webinars that we're updating for our 510K course. So you can go to the 510K course page. And we announce all these webinars in our live streaming and on different social media platforms. So check it out in those different locations. If you want to ask any specific questions about your company that might be proprietary, schedule a meeting with me through Calendly. You can also put comments down below to ask questions that are not confidential. You can send emails, or you can call me on my cell phone. That's also my WhatsApp number. So I hope that answers all of your questions. And I wanted to thank Greg for joining today. Nice to have you in the same time zone, and looking forward to talking to you later on today. And like I said, if anybody has any further questions about this procedure, put them in the comments below, and talk to you later.